They didn't send me to negotiate. They sent me to end a species. By the time this message reaches command, I'll already be inside the hive, or dead in it. That was the agreement. No extraction, no backup, no second chances. Just a straight line from orbit to the heart of something humanity had already decided was a threat that couldn't be reasoned with. The target wasn't just another hostile organism. It was the alien queen, the mind behind the attacks, the architect of every colony that had gone silent. Entire settlements erased without warning. No survivors, no distress calls, just empty structures and scorched ground like life itself had been peeled away. That's what they told us, and I believed it. You don't get selected for missions like this unless you believe in something simple. Clear lines. Enemy and ally. Kill or be killed. I'd spent years proving I could follow that logic without hesitation. They enhanced me for it. Sharpened instincts, suppressed doubt, turned hesitation into something that felt like a malfunction. I wasn't sent because I was the strongest. I was sent because I wouldn't question the order. Or at least, that's what they thought. The drop was silent. Stealth pod, heat masked, no thruster flare. I punched through the outer atmosphere of the dead colony world and landed 10 kilometers from the hive. No resistance, no patrols. Just wind-dragging ash across broken ground. The colony had once held over 50,000 people, families, workers, engineers. Now it was hollow. Structures still standing but lifeless. Doors open. Equipment abandoned. No signs of struggle. That was the part that never made sense. If this was an attack, where were the bodies? I moved fast, sticking to shadows, scanning for movement. My suit filtered toxins, tracked heat signatures, mapped terrain in real time. Everything worked perfectly. Everything except the silence. No wildlife. No residual signals, not even the kind of ambient noise you expect from a ruined place. It was like the planet itself was holding its breath. The hive came into view as the sun dipped behind the horizon. It wasn't built. It had grown. A massive structure of dark organic material rising out of the ground like a wound that never healed. Twisted spires, pulsing surfaces, veins of faint light moving beneath the skin of it. This was the source, the place every report pointed to, the birthplace of the thing I was sent to kill. I checked my weapons one last time. Primary rifle, charged. Secondary blade, coated. Charges, armed. Enough firepower to level the entire structure if I reached the core. The mission was simple. Get in. Find the queen. End it. No room for interpretation. I breached the outer layer without resistance. That should have been my first warning. The walls closed behind me as I moved deeper. Not mechanically, organically. The structure was alive, responding to my presence. But it didn't attack. It didn't even try to stop me. I kept moving. The tunnels twisted downward, narrowing and widening unpredictably. My scanner struggled to map them. The material absorbed signals, distorted readings. I had to rely on instinct. Direction. A pull that didn't come from any instrument. Still no enemies, no swarm, no defensive response, nothing. Every briefing I'd ever read described overwhelming resistance. Endless numbers, relentless aggression. But here inside the center of it all, there was only silence. It didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like something else. I passed through chambers lined with strange fibrous structures. Some were empty. Others held remnants, broken shells, fragments of something that might have once been alive. Not weapons, not soldiers. Something incomplete. I didn't stop to analyze. That wasn't part of the mission. But I noticed. The deeper I went, the more the silence pressed in. My footsteps echoed in ways that didn't make sense, like the space itself was larger than what I could see. My breathing sounded too loud inside the helmet. I adjusted my pace, slowing slightly. Not out of fear, just recalibration. Something was wrong. Then I reached the inner chamber. It opened without warning. One moment I was in a narrow tunnel. The next I stepped into a vast space that stretched beyond the limits of my suit's lighting. The air was warmer here, thicker, alive in a way the rest of the hive wasn't. And at the center of it, the queen. She was larger than anything the reports had described, not just in size, but in presence. Her body was anchored to the ground, fused with the structure itself, as if the hive had grown from her. Layers of armored plating, ridged and curved, shifting slightly with each slow breath. I raised my weapon immediately. Training took over. Target acquired. Distance measured, wind non-existent. Clean shot. She didn't move. No attack, no defensive posture, no signal to summon others. She just watched, if something like that could be called watching. My targeting system locked onto multiple vital points. I could end it in seconds. One shot, maybe two. Then plant the charges and burn the rest. That was the plan. That was the mission. But something didn't fit. Her posture wasn't aggressive. It wasn't even alert. There was no tension in her form, no readiness to strike. It was the stillness of something that didn't see me as a threat. That didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. I took a step forward, adjusting my aim. The rifle tracked perfectly, steady in my hands. My finger rested on the trigger, pressure calibrated, ready. Still nothing. No movement, no reaction, just that silence. Then, I noticed what surrounded her. At first, it looked like part of the floor. Organic shapes, clustered in uneven patterns. But as I focused, the detail sharpened. They weren't structures. They were eggs. Hundreds, no, thousands. Arranged carefully around her, layered in concentric formations, some intact, some cracked, some damaged. I lowered the rifle slightly, just enough to see more clearly. They weren't weapons. They weren't ready to hatch into soldiers. They were fragile, thin-shelled, protected, not deployed, and many of them were broken, not from within, from impact. Scorch marks, fractures. Residue patterns I recognized immediately. Human weapons. I felt something shift in my chest. Not hesitation. Not yet. Just awareness. This wasn't what they told us. This wasn't an army waiting to strike. This looked like something trying to survive. I tightened my grip on the rifle, forcing the thought down. The mission didn't change. The target didn't change. The queen was still responsible, still the source, still the threat. That's what mattered. That's what I'd been trained to believe. I raised the weapon again, aligning the shot. Her head tilted, just slightly, not a defensive move, not aggression, recognition. And for the first time since I entered the hive, I hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. But it was enough to feel it. Doubt. I adjusted my stance, forcing the motion out of my system. My breathing steadied. My focus narrowed. This was the moment. End it. Complete the mission. No more questions. No more hesitation. I centered the reticle on her core and prepared to fire. And that's when everything stopped making sense. My finger tightened on the trigger, but it didn't move. Up close, nothing about her matched the briefings. She wasn't coiled to strike. No tension, no signal to call a swarm. Just stillness, controlled, deliberate, like she had already decided I wasn't worth killing. That alone should have made it easier. Instead, it did the opposite. Every instinct I had was built around reaction. Threat meets force. Movement meets response. But there was no movement here. No hostility. Just awareness. She shifted slightly, a slow, measured motion that made the chamber breathe with her. The structure around her pulsed faintly, as if connected to her rhythm. Not a weapon, not a trap, a system. I adjusted my aim again, forcing my focus back into place. Target locked, distance unchanged. Clean shot, still nothing from her. Then something else broke through the silence. A sound, not loud. Not external. It came from inside the suit, no, deeper than that, inside my head, a pressure more than a voice, like a thought that didn't belong to me. At first, I dismissed it. Neural feedback glitch. Stress response. My enhancements weren't perfect. Sometimes signals crossed under extreme conditions. But this wasn't random. It had structure. Images flickered at the edge of my vision, not seen through my eyes, inserted directly, bypassing the interface. My system didn't register them as external data, which meant they weren't coming from my gear. They were coming from her. I froze. The rifle remained steady, but everything else stopped. Even my breathing paused. The pressure intensified, not painful, just insistent. Then the images sharpened. A sky I didn't recognize, vast, bright. Not the dead gray of the colony world outside, something alive. A horizon filled with structures, organic, but not like the hive. Open, expansive. A world that hadn't been hollowed out. Movement, countless forms, similar to her but smaller, moving freely, not clustered in defense, not hidden, a civilization. The image shifted. Fire. The sky split open with streaks of light, not natural, controlled, directed. I recognized the pattern instantly. Human entry vectors. The next sequence came faster, explosions tearing through the surface, shockwaves ripping through structures, the forms, her kind, scattering, not attacking, running, not toward us, away. The pressure in my head tightened, forcing the next image through. Ships descending. Ours, weapon signatures unmistakable. Precision strikes. Targeted destruction. No attempted contact. No warning. Just elimination. I staggered half a step, the rifle dipping before I caught it. My system tried to compensate, stabilizing my posture, but it couldn't filter what I was seeing. Because it wasn't coming through the system, it was being given. The images slowed. A single figure. Her. Smaller than, not yet what she had become. Surrounded by others, a moment of stillness before impact. Then, everything burned. The connection snapped for a second, like a breath taken too sharply. I forced myself to focus, dragging my attention back to the present. The chamber. The queen. The weapon still in my hands. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. The mission reports were clear. The aliens attacked first. They wiped out colonies. They expanded into human territory without warning. That was the truth. It had to be. The pressure returned, stronger this time. Not just images. Emotion, raw, unfiltered. Loss, not rage, not hatred, grief. It hit harder than the visuals. It wasn't something I saw, it was something I felt. Forced into me, bypassing every barrier my conditioning had built. I tightened my grip on the rifle, trying to anchor myself, trying to push it out. But it didn't leave. It deepened. Another image. This one closer to what I'd seen outside. The colony world. But not as I found it. Alive. Human structures intact. Activity. Movement. People. Then the sky again. Not with our ships this time. Something else. Dark. Faster. Unfamiliar trajectories. Not human. Not hers. The image fractured before I could process it fully. The connection pulled back slightly, like it had reached a limit. I exhaled slowly, realizing I'd been holding my breath. The queen hadn't moved, not once. She remained anchored, watching, waiting, not for an opportunity to strike, but for something else. Understanding. I shook my head, trying to clear it. This wasn't part of the mission. This wasn't something I was trained for. Information like this, it didn't get shared. It didn't get interpreted. It got ignored or eliminated. I raised the rifle again, forcing the reticle back onto her. The targeting system re-engaged instantly, as if nothing had happened. Clean shot. End it. That was the order. That was the purpose. But the images didn't fade. They stayed, layered behind my vision. The burning sky, the fleeing figures, the absence of aggression. This wasn't an invasion. It was a retreat. And we had followed. I adjusted my stance, trying to steady the conflict building in my chest. My enhancements pushed back, dampening emotional spikes, regulating response. It wasn't enough. For the first time since I'd been modified, the suppression didn't fully hold. The thought broke through. What if we were wrong? The question alone felt like a breach. I tightened my grip, forcing the rifle steady again. My finger found the trigger, pressure building. This wasn't about right or wrong, it was about orders. Mission parameters didn't change because of uncertainty, they existed to eliminate it. I focused on her core, isolating the target from everything else. The eggs, the chamber, the images, just the objective. The queen, the source, the threat. I started to pull the trigger. The pressure returned, sharp, immediate. Not images this time. A single, clear sensation. Fear. Not for herself. For the eggs. My finger stopped. I didn't decide to stop it. It just did. The realization hit harder than anything before. If I fired now, this wasn't a battle. It wasn't defense. It was execution. I lowered the rifle, just an inch. Enough to break the targeting lock. My system reacted instantly, warning signals flashing, recalibration prompts flooding my vision. I ignored them. The chamber felt different now. Not silent, just understood in a way it hadn't been before. This wasn't a war zone. It was a sanctuary. Damaged, threatened, but still protected. I looked at the eggs again, the fractures, the scorch marks, evidence I couldn't dismiss. We had been here before, not to negotiate, not to understand, to destroy. I lifted my gaze back to the queen. She hadn't moved, hadn't pressed the connection further. No attempt to overwhelm me, no force, just presence. Waiting, giving me the choice. That was the part that broke everything. If she were the monster they described, she wouldn't hesitate. She wouldn't show restraint. She wouldn't risk leaving me alive inside her core. But she had. And that meant something I wasn't prepared to accept. I glanced down at my weapon, then back at her. The mission was still active, the command link still open. They were waiting for confirmation, a simple signal. Target eliminated. End of report. I could still do it. Finish what I was sent here for. No one would question it. No one would know what I saw. What I felt. It would all disappear with her. Clean. Final. Just like every other mission. My grip tightened again. The trigger waited. But the clarity was gone. In its place was something far more dangerous. Understanding. I exhaled slowly, the sound loud inside my helmet. If I pulled the trigger now, I wouldn't be saving humanity. I'd be finishing a genocide. The connection didn't fade. It deepened. I kept the rifle lowered just enough to keep my systems quiet, but not enough to break posture. Training still held. The mission was still active. Somewhere above this dead world, command was waiting for confirmation that I'd done what they sent me to do. Instead, I stood there, listening to something I was never supposed to hear. The pressure returned. Not violent. Not intrusive. Controlled. Intentional. Like she understood exactly how much I could take. The images shifted again, closer this time. Not her world. Not the colony. Me. I saw through my own eyes, but it wasn't a memory I recognized. Different angle. Different moment. A lab. Bright light. Sterile surfaces. Figures moving around me, speaking in tones I couldn't quite hear. My body was there. Younger. Unmodified. On a table. I tried to pull back, but the connection held. Not forcing, just showing. Needles. Interfaces. Neural mapping. Data extraction. My vitals spiking, then flattening as sedation took over. I remembered the enhancement program. I remembered agreeing to it. What I didn't remember was this part. The image shifted. Samples being taken. Genetic markers isolated. Sequences copied, altered, repurposed. Not just improving me, using me. The realization hit before the next image even formed. This wasn't just about making a better soldier. It was about creating something else. Something beyond human. The pressure intensified, guiding the final piece into place. Her. Not as she was now, but earlier. Smaller. Unformed. Suspended in a containment field, surrounded by human equipment. Not alien, human. Data streams running through her structure. Patterns I recognized from my own augmentation process. Neural frameworks. Adaptive learning models. My models. I staggered slightly, catching myself before my balance fully broke. My grip tightened on the rifle, but it felt distant now. Secondary. Irrelevant compared to what was unfolding. She wasn't just alien. She was engineered. And the blueprint was mine. The connection eased just enough for me to process it. Not overwhelming, not crushing, just undeniable. Humanity didn't just attack her species. We created her. A hybrid, a bridge. Something designed to think like us, adapt like them, and survive anything in between. And then, we lost control. Or worse, we abandoned it. I forced a breath through clenched teeth, trying to stabilize the flood of information. My enhancements struggled to suppress it. This wasn't fear. It wasn't panic. It was clarity. The kind that breaks systems built on certainty. I looked at her again, really looked this time. Past the size, past the structure, past everything I'd been trained to see. There was something familiar in the way she held herself. Not physically, something deeper, pattern recognition, behavioral echo. She wasn't reacting like a predator. She was assessing like a human. The connection pulsed once more. Not images this time. Memory. Mine. Moments I knew. Training exercises. Tactical simulations. Decision trees. The way I evaluated threats. The way I chose outcomes based on probability and cost. She showed me those same patterns in her own actions. How she positioned her hive. How she moved her kind. Not for expansion, for survival. Every attack we recorded wasn't aggression, it was calculated defense, and we misread it every time. Because we never expected something like her to think the way we do. The realization settled in, heavy and irreversible. She wasn't the enemy we thought we were fighting. She was the result of us trying to control something we didn't understand, and then fearing it when it didn't stay contained. The pressure shifted again. Sharper now. Urgent. The images returned, but different from before. Faster. Fragmented. A sky, dark, but not like the one outside. This was deeper, denser. Movement across it that didn't follow any known trajectory. No entry pattern. No controlled descent. Something else. Something wrong. The surface below it cracked, not from impact, but from pressure. As if the air itself was being forced downward. Structures collapsed inward, not outward. Gravity distortion. I'd only seen readings like that in theoretical models, nothing we'd ever encountered, nothing we could fight with conventional means. Her world ending. Not in fire this time, in silence. Complete erasure. The connection tightened, forcing me to stay with it. This wasn't history. This was warning. The image shifted again, back to the colony world. The same one I'd crossed to reach this hive. But this time, I saw what I missed. Not just human structures, defensive formations, hers, integrated into the colony layout. Hidden, subtle, reinforcing weak points, shielding population centers. She hadn't come here to destroy it, she came here to fortify it. To prepare. For that. The thing in the sky. The fragments aligned in my mind faster than I could process them. Her species wasn't expanding, they were running. And we chased them. Mistook their movement for invasion, met it with force, forced them into corners. And now, there was nowhere left to run. The pressure eased, leaving one final impression. Direction. Not a location I could map, but a vector. A sense of approach. Closing distance. Whatever destroyed her world was coming here next. And we weren't ready. I straightened slowly, the rifle still in my hands but forgotten. My systems buzzed with suppressed alerts, trying to reassert control. Mission parameters, target status, command priority. All of it felt distant now. Irrelevant compared to what I knew. This wasn't about one species anymore. This was about survival. Not just hers, ours. I lifted my gaze to her again. No movement, no pressure. The connection held, but she wasn't pushing anything further. She'd shown me everything she could. The rest was on me. A faint signal pulsed at the edge of my awareness, my calms. I hadn't noticed it before. The hive must have been dampening it, or maybe I just wasn't listening. Now it came through clearly. Command, sharp, direct, unchanged. Confirm target acquisition. I didn't respond. A pause. Then again, tighter this time. Confirm kill. My grip on the rifle tightened reflexively. The training surged back, trying to override everything else. Clear directive. Immediate execution. No deviation. That's what I was built for. That's what I'd always done. The chamber felt smaller suddenly. Not physically, but in pressure. Expectation closing in from two directions. Behind me, humanity. In front of me, something we created, something we hunted, something we misunderstood. And beyond all of it, something worse. The comms flared again, cutting through the silence. Do it. Now. 10 seconds. That's all they were giving me. 10 seconds to complete the mission. 10 seconds to erase everything I'd just seen. 10 seconds to make sure no one ever questioned the narrative again. I looked down at the rifle. Then, back at her. No movement. No plea. No attempt to stop me. Just that same stillness. Trust. Or maybe something even more dangerous. Hope. The countdown started in my head without needing to be spoken. 10. 9. My finger found the trigger again. 8. 7. The targeting system flickered, trying to lock. 6. 5. The images didn't return. They didn't need to. 4. 3. I already knew. 2. 1. I had 10 seconds to decide the fate of two species. I didn't pull the trigger. The pressure on it faded as if my hand no longer belonged to the mission. For the first time since I was trained, the order didn't override the decision. It just stopped mattering. I lowered the rifle. Not by instinct, not by hesitation, by choice. The comms lit up instantly. Status. I said nothing. A sharp burst of static followed. Then a tighter voice, colder. Confirm kill. My gaze stayed fixed ahead. No movement from her. No reaction. The connection remained quiet, like she already knew what I was about to do before I fully accepted it myself. I'm not taking the shot. Silence. Not the empty kind. The kind that tightens before it breaks. Repeat. I'm not taking the shot. There was a pause. Short, controlled, calculating. Then the tone changed. You are under direct command authority. Execute the objective immediately. My grip shifted on the rifle, not tightening, releasing. No. Another pause. Longer this time. When the voice returned, it carried something I hadn't heard before. Not authority. Containment. You were compromised. I almost laughed at that, but the sound didn't come out. It just sat there hollow. Negative. I'm clear. Your telemetry disagrees. Neural fluctuations outside acceptable range. Emotional interference detected. Of course it was. That's what happens when you see something you weren't meant to. I have full control. No, you don't. A new signal layered over the comms. Encryption spike. Priority override. I recognized it immediately. Termination protocol. They weren't going to argue. They were going to erase the problem. You will comply or be neutralized. I looked down at my arm. The implant interface beneath the armor pulsed once, waiting for the command it was designed to obey. I'd always known this was part of it. No one sends a weapon like me without a failsafe. But knowing it and facing it, different things. Final warning. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. Then I reached up and cut the link. The silence that followed was absolute. No command, no signal, no external control, just me. and the decision I'd already made. The implant pulsed again, harder this time. Autonomous sequence initiating. It didn't need the signal anymore. The protocol was embedded deep enough to act on its own. Pain followed. Sharp. Immediate. Not physical at first. Neural. Like something digging through my mind, searching for the pathway it needed to shut me down. I dropped to one knee, the rifle slipping from my grip and hitting the ground without a sound. My vision fractured at the edges. System alerts flared, then collapsed into static. This was it. This was how they ended it when something went off script. I clenched my jaw, forcing my focus inward. The enhancements weren't just for combat. They gave me access, limited, buried, but enough. I found the pathway. The override wasn't clean. It wasn't meant to be accessed from this side. But it was there. A seam in the design, something they never expected me to use, because I was never supposed to resist. The pain spiked as I pushed into it, forcing the signal to reroute. The implant fought back, trying to complete its sequence. I pushed harder, not with strength, with will. For a second it felt like it would break me. Then it broke instead. The pulse stopped. The pressure vanished. My vision snapped back into place, systems stabilizing one by one. The alerts faded, leaving only the low hum of my suit and the quiet presence ahead of me. I stayed where I was for a moment, catching my breath. Alive. Still in control. Barely. I reached down, picked up the rifle, and looked at it. A tool. Nothing more. I disengaged the primary power cell and dropped it to the ground. The weapon went dark instantly. No more clean shots. No more easy endings. I turned slightly, scanning the chamber again. The eggs, the fractures, the marks we left behind. Then back to her. She hadn't moved, not once through any of it. But something had changed, not in her position, in the space between us. The connection returned, not forceful, not urgent, just present. Acknowledgement. I stepped forward. Slow. Deliberate. Closing the distance without raising a threat. My hand came up, not to aim, not to strike, just open. I didn't know if she understood the gesture, but I understood what it meant. No hostility. No attack. A choice to stand down. The chamber responded, not physically, but subtly. The tension I hadn't noticed before eased. The air felt lighter. Then the connection shifted again. Not images this time. Direction. Urgency. Stronger than before. I looked up instinctively, even though there was nothing to see through layers of hive and sky. But I felt it. Closer now. Whatever she showed me earlier, it wasn't distant anymore. Time was running out. I turned back to her. We don't have long. The words sounded strange coming out of me. Not an order, not a report. A statement. Shared. The connection pulsed in response. Agreement. I moved again, faster this time. Not away, not retreating. Around the chamber. Assessing. Mapping. My systems recalibrated for something they weren't originally designed for. Defense. Not against her. For her. For everything in this place. The irony didn't escape me. They sent me here to end it. Instead, I was preparing to protect it. I accessed what remained of my comms, internal only. No external signal. No tracking. Just the tools I still controlled. The hive structure wasn't random. It was layered, reinforced in some areas, vulnerable in others. I started marking points. Places that could hold. Places that would fail. We didn't have time to rebuild. But we had time to prepare. I glanced back at her once more. No fear, no panic, just that same steady presence, and behind it, resolve. Not just to survive, to stand. The connection deepened one last time, not to show, not to explain, to align. Different species, different origins, same outcome, fight, together. I tightened my gloves, feeling the systems lock into place. Above us, beyond the sky I couldn't see, something was coming. Not human. Not hers. Something that didn't care who we were or what we'd done. Only that we existed. I stepped into position, no longer a weapon sent to destroy. Something else now. A choice made, not programmed. They sent me to kill a monster. But in the end, the only thing I destroyed was the lie.